Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being here this evening. We know there's so much going on in the world of advocacy and organizing, and the fact that you would take the time to be with us is really meaningful. So thank you so much. And on behalf of the other two trainers on this call, Goldie and Nayo, we extend our thanks. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping. The three folks that will be part of the training today are Goldie Guman, who is the community organizing intern here in CWS Lancaster. There's Nayo, from another refugee community organizer in CWS Durham, and that's me on the far right, Matt Johnson, the organizer here in Lancaster. And again, we really appreciate you coming out tonight. It means a lot. Just to give you an intro to Church World Service, in case you're not familiar, CWS is an international humanitarian organization comprised of 37 member communities, and we're one of the 9 voluntary agencies that does resettlement in the United States. And we operate in 33 communities with offices in 21 states. We are the only national resettlement organization that is fully ingrained in refugee leadership development, meaning that we have the organizational capacity to help develop refugee leaders, former refugee leaders. And we feel that this helps bridge the gap between resettlement and immigrants' rights groups so that we can help provide direct services, but also make communities more welcoming and more integrative of the immigrant communities, the new American communities that enter them. And grassroots organizing at CWS has been going on for about 7 years because we started there in 2015. We would also like to thank Opportunity for All for helping organize this, and they are part of a larger coalition of We Are All America and other partners. As you can see, Church World Service, CWS is there, and all of these other wonderful groups that help make up the team at We Are All America. And as they say here, and I'll read, for those of you at home, Opportunity for All is a vibrant national campaign led by former refugees, asylees, and immigrants designed to shift social, political, and economic conditions so that refugees can achieve their full potential and ensure America remains a nation of opportunity for those seeking freedom, safety, and refuge in the U.S. And the campaign goals are to build the infrastructure for refugee power, achieve concrete organizing wins through Organizing for America, and to shift the refugee narrative. So those are all very important goals, and again, want to thank them for inviting us to speak and for all the work that they do on the ground. All right, moving ahead, I think we all know this at this point. We've been doing this since almost a year and a half, going on 2 years now. But just a reminder to, just a reminder to make sure that if you're not speaking, that you mute yourself. And I think that a good rule of thumb is, since there are a lot of people on, which is a really great thing, to consider maybe not having your video on at this time, because that can eat away at the bandwidth that we have. Please feel free, and we really encourage participation. Use the chat box to interact. In fact, if you want to go ahead and start putting in your names and organizations and locations and any other information you'd like to share, that would be wonderful in the chat box. If you do need to speak with a larger group, please just raise your hand with either the icon or your actual hand if you are live. Otherwise, again, we've all been through a million of these now, so hopefully we kind of know the drill at this point. So moving on, like I said, make sure to put your name and organization in the chat, and we just love to see all the places that people are from and where you're tuning in from. So that's just really, really awesome. All right, going forward, we want to lay out the outcomes for today's training. This is a companion training to one that Nayo and I did in July of this year. That was Local Government 101. So now you're being treated to the to the deeper version of this. And so the outcomes for the training are a little different because we want to dig a little deeper to show the sorts of things that can be accomplished at the local level. So the first thing is the same from our last training, which is that participants will learn about the structure and functions of local government. Participants will learn how to engage with local government to address the immediate and long-term needs of immigrant communities. And we want to really emphasize that second part, immediate and long-term. These do not have to be mutually exclusive. And in fact, a lot of times addressing immediate needs can help us get closer to addressing the structural needs that are important in our local communities. And finally, participants will be given 2 case studies that highlight the importance of trust building, creativity, and solutions-oriented thinking to achieve major results. I am blown away by the work that Nayo does in Durham, and so I'm very excited to talk about his major case study. But before we get there, there's a kind of simple question, which is why local government? Okay, why should we care? Why do we bother? And what is it really? What's going on here? I think that the first answer to that is that other than major issues dealing with immigration policy, as in who can come, what they can do when they're here, how you go to get citizenship, and by no means do I want to minimize those issues, but outside of those major issues, local politics and local policies affect every aspect of new Americans' lives. And they can really make the difference between a positive experience and an extremely negative experience. It can make the difference between feeling as if you're welcome in a community or feeling as if you're an outsider. Local government really has the power to kind of cement that first impression and that lasting experience with American government. So it's really important to right away point out that the things that happen at the local level are, by the structure of American government, very localized, including housing concerns, affordable housing, safe housing, lead-free housing, public housing, quality of life issues, water, sewer, trash. We don't think about these things, but this is one of the major functions of local government, to make sure that water comes in and sewage goes out and trash is taken out. Litter, noise, libraries, all of these issues that you have in accessing just the day-to-day needs of life are going to be covered by local government. Public safety, which includes fire, police, ambulance, health services, and then finally these other services that we think of as they're oftentimes part of the battles that we see in national campaigns and national debates. And yet oftentimes these direct services are provided almost entirely at the local level. Even if they receive federal funding, they're provided for at the local level. So health, mental health, human rights, those things are kind of crucial to how local government works. But so you would think if you could basically talk about every single thing that we just talked about there, which is basically everyone's day-to-day life, you'd expect that there would be more participation at the local level. And I have a graph here that demonstrates, this is in Pennsylvania, where I am in Pittsburgh, voter turnout rates based on what year election is, okay? And what it clearly shows that in, say, for example, 2016, the general election, presidential election, House of Representatives at the federal level, and some Senate seats showed over 70% of voters in Allegheny County came out to vote in that election. Now, don't want to ever say, as we have known from, say, the last 4 years, that these elections aren't important. But what I do want to demonstrate is the very next year in Allegheny County, which is 2017, which is a municipal local election, just over 20% of people showed up. That is a 50% drop. half of the people that came out in 2016 to vote for president and Senate and House, half of those people voted for the local elections. And if you break it down even farther, which this map does, we're noticing participation as low as just over 2% in those elections. And then if you look again, back in 2018, these are sometimes called midterm elections, where the House of Representatives federally is voted on again, the Senate and the Senate, that plunges back, or it skyrockets back up again closer to 60%, and then in 2019 drops down again. So all of that to say is, why is it that if local government is responsible for so much of your daily life, from the street you live in, the house that you live in, the services that you're provided, the fire service that you have, do we see such low voter turnout? And in fact, we used our municipalities to talk about this. And in the last municipal cycle, only 19% of voters in Lancaster City, 13% of voters in Durham, in North Carolina, came out to vote for those local elections. And that is just a troubling figure for any of us that know how much goes into local elections. I oftentimes point out that minuscule margins. I ran for city council locally and lost by 62 votes. I have a chart here of a runoff result in Hoxie City, Mississippi, where the two city council candidates got the exact same number of votes. And it later came out that one of them forgot to vote for himself. So I guess I just gave away who it was. And so it went down to a coin toss, and then nobody wants a coin toss to decide something like democracy. That happened in the Virginia House, though, where a coin toss decided control, not just one individual race, but control of the Virginia House of Delegates. So what that means is, if you were the one in 19% in Lancaster that voted versus the 70% that voted in the presidential election, you have a lot more power to shape how your locality looks than you do in a federal election. This is to say, vote in every election that you can, but if 1 in 5 voters are voting in municipal elections, that means they have an outsized role to play. So that's a troubling thing. So I wanted to talk real quick. I think I have the wrong slide here. That's my bad. But I wanted to talk about making sure that you understand your locality and the structure of your government, as well as the actual geographic lines of your government. It is, in America, a very tangled and very unclear chain of command sometimes. In other words, sometimes, at a local level, a county takes care of something, or a city takes care of it, or a township, or a parish if you're in Louisiana. So there's all of these local governmental structures. And even though it can be sometimes confusing, it's so important that you figure out exactly who is in charge of a specific project or not. So I'll give you an example. Recently, the local leaders of an Ethiopian American society were helping a member who was being wrongfully evicted. And they finally came to me and said, we've tried everything and no one wants to listen. So it turned out they had sent a letter to our sitting congressman, our House representative, to the mayor of the city of Lancaster, and to one other state elected official. It turns out that obviously the federal representative was probably too high level of a person to go to for this. The mayor was mayor of her city, but not of this area where this gentleman lived. And then the state representative was not a representative from that area. So they felt frustrated. They felt like no one was listening to them. They felt that they were being brushed aside. And the only problem was that they weren't actually talking to the correct local officials. If they had spoken to someone in their township, they had spoken to someone in the city that they lived in, perhaps they could have gotten relief. But what that did was it created this sense that local government doesn't care, they're not responsive, when really you just need to be informed about how to interact with what local government. So it's very important that you tease out who is in charge of what in your locality. And it's not always easy to do that, but it's something that is worth the time. I also want to point out that it's really important that you understand the structure of your local government. So for example, like I said, sometimes I know in my county, the county is in charge of things like health and mental health and aging. And the city doesn't have direct services for those things, but they do directly take care of streets, they take care of sidewalks and trees and so forth. In other places, the county doesn't have any of that power, and the city itself provides homeless services, health services, and so forth. Very important for you to understand within your city what sort of structure it has. Does it have a strong mayor form of government, which means that the mayor makes decisions and then the council votes on those, or if they have a weak mayor where the council makes the decisions and the mayor is more of a symbolic figurehead. Now, it's important because if you've spent a lot of time lobbying your mayor and then you expect a certain result that mayor can't necessarily deliver, it can again create the sense that there isn't really as much trust, or you really aren't getting what you need. So it's very important to know what's going on there. So I hope that has helped kind of motivate you to realize that you have a lot of power at the local level because so few people vote. We want to see more people voting. That local elections matter because they dictate basically everything that your life is surrounded by on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, we also want to make sure that you realize that the local level, as we're about to hear from Nayo, is the place where you can build relationships, where you can build trust, and you can get a lot done that feels very distant when you try to do it at the state level or the federal level. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Nayo, who's going to talk about a case study that he was part of here in Durham. So there you go, Nayo.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Before I go, I continue, I have a question for everyone that is on here. Please do me a quick favor, write your answer in the chat. We're going to double check that real quick and we move forward, all right? So my question is, does engagement with the local government stop with the local elections? It's a yes or no question, real quick. Let me check it. Let me check it. Great, good question, good answers. Keep it coming. 30 more seconds, keep it coming. All right, all right. Yep, I like this. This is great. Keep it coming. All right, great answers. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Great answers, of course. Engagement with the local government does not stop with the local elections. Technically, when you, like Matt says it, when you go out and vote, it's not done. Just that's the beginning of the work. So I'm gonna talk to you about a case study from Durham, how we engage the government, not only at an election level, but much more deeper level, right? So I'm gonna talk through a deeper engagement with the local government that not only solves a specific concern, but led to a more lasting change in the way that that local government interact with the immigrant community in Durham. This is going to be the key to our understanding of local government. At the state or federal level, you can push for the passage of this or that bill, but at the local government level, you can build systems that can meet the needs of your community, which are different from other communities, right? Next slide. Thanks. So I'm going to start with what we achieved, then work backward to show, to how we got there. As a group, we persuade the city and the county to put their head together. Head means like to put their pocket together, budget-wise, to create a new position, a position called Refugee and Immigrant Strategies position. And that position will ensure that policies and programs enacted by the city and the county gain input from the immigrant community and are enacted in a way that are accessible to that community. This is a big deal. Yeah, look at that. Like in your communities everywhere, I don't think we do have those kind of position yet, kind of like a bridge between the local government and the refugee and immigrant community. So this is what we're doing here in Durham. Next slide. So big wins like this don't come from one engagement one time. It comes from a process of addressing specific needs and then build trust and coalitions. For us, that started with started when we were addressing the COVID needs for refugee and immigrants community. You know, at that time, the COVID, even though it might be like a very bad thing, has put to the forefront of everyone how these communities are not consulted on. People, the government does not really know how to engage with those communities. And this is, I'm very excited about this. So yes, go along with me. I'll show you why. Next slide. So because COVID or most issues that take more than just one department or one official, we built at that time, we built a task force to address various needs for COVID. That meant we had an elected official that was on the task force. It was the city council lady, Ms. Javiera, very dynamic. We had public health officials to pretty much explain what was going on, right? We had organization that does the interpretation called TILDE, and that fight for language equity, right? And TILDE, it's one of these emerging organization that also solidify that link that we're trying to build. And we have people in logistics, community-based organization where different languages are spoken in the Durham County and Durham City. We have community college representatives where most immigrants and refugees go back again to school to like get back to what they used to do, right? So we had some business owners that employs refugees, and we have community leaders that speak Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, and most of them are like former refugees and other immigrants, right? So all these people that are on the task force are pretty much the link between their community and the task force at the time. So they bring issues, and in 2020, the issue that was on forefront is like the lack of PPE, right? We have like most immigrants and refugees that are working in that cannot afford to stay home, where everyone was like staying home at the time they have to go to work. But some of them, most of them, will like use one PPE for like 1 week. So that was not good. So we wanted to change that. So we put our head together, and most of people on the task force, we did know one another for a while. We've been on most refugee stakeholders meetings quarterly for like the past 2-3 years. So we pretty much know one another. They've been in these communities, and that relationship that we had before getting on that task force was very, very good, because it did not shorten the time. It just get us just started and running. So yeah, from that we bring issues from our communities to those who can provide answers and resources that can help. So because of the COVID urgency and the need for the PPE, the task force used to meet like twice a week. So people like dedicated their time to bring issues from the community twice a week. And then we moved to every Thursday afternoon. Next slide, please. So the experience of the task force led its participants to attempt to tackle other issues that the refugee and immigrant community face. This meant that we were building on existing relationship ideas and collaboration to move past the reasons for the task force to exist. So while we get together and feel like, okay, we need the elected officials or those who have who are in charge of resources to talk directly to the community, we create a town hall where we practice that language equity that Tilde was trying to push forward, right? So that town hall was done in three languages, English, Spanish, and Swahili. That was great for the mayor to come out of the back and start speaking Swahili. And after that, everyone's like, since when the mayor speaks Swahili? I was surprised too. So that was a great thing. And after we know that the task force was going to be dismantled, we needed to have something that would last for a long time. And that's where we came up with the idea of creating that refugee and immigrant strategies post or department of position to help the city help other refugee and immigrant in our community. So what did we learn exactly? Next slide. So what we learned is this: we might be from different communities, as we are now on this training. We are from different communities, but if you look thoroughly, you would know that we have the same issue, and COVID had shown that. There's no difference. We have the same issues. So we also learned that we cannot work in a silo. So here to tell you that either you are born here or not born here, once you're here, we have to work together. We cannot work in a silo, and we have to work together to achieve something. And the next thing that we also learn is that elected officials are more than willing to help if we can just show them what we are looking for and how they can help us, right? We are looking for a link between the government, the local government, and the refugee and immigrant community, right? So how can they help us create that? We don't have the money for it. They do. They know where to find it, and they will find that and fund that position. So building relationship with the elected officials is very, very important. And this is why I invited today one of my great friends, Senator Mike Woodruff. Next slide. Senator Mike Woodruff is one of the elected officials, the senators of Durham community. But when I first met him, let me tell you, I was very surprised of how willing he is to like come to the refugee community and talk to people and meet them. I even invited him to an ESL class, and everyone's like, "Oh, now how did you do that? How did?" But it's nothing special. It's just this is a great man, and I will really let Senator Woodruff talk to you about why building a relationship with the elected officials beyond election is important. Senator Woodruff, take it on.
Oh, 1 second. I need to provide some permissions.
Okay. Yeah, while we're waiting for Senator Woodruff, yes. So I was talking about how we went beyond electing or participating in election and really building that relationship with the elected officials to create that bridge that we always want to build, right? And this position, for instance, of refugee and immigrant strategies, it's like a solid bridge that links the local government and the refugee and immigrant community. So now we have a way to talk to them directly. Is Senator Woodruff ready?
I think so. I
All
think
right.
I'm on now, and I hope you can hear me. Does everybody hear me okay, Neo? Good. Well, good evening to all of you. I'm very honored to be with you all tonight. I appreciate Neo's invitation. He's always very kind in inviting me to participate in activities with the refugee community in the region, and very generous in his introduction of me tonight. Just by way of quick introduction, my name is Mike Woodard, and I serve in the State Senate here in North Carolina. I've been here serving in the Senate for 9 years. Before that, I served on the Durham City Council for 7 years. And the first question Neo posed to me is, what lessons did I take from my work in local government to my work here in the State Senate? And it's interesting doing both of those in the context of your conversation tonight about local government. I now work at the state level in state government, and I represent not only Durham County, where I still live, including the city of Durham, and then the surrounding county, but 2 neighboring counties north of Durham, Granville County and Person County. So I have continued to have interaction with the local governments in that district. I think one of the important lessons I took with me from my work in local government to work here at state government is that people matter. I have much closer contact with the people I represent, my constituents, when I served in local government than I do now. It's because there's so many more of them across 3 counties, greater geography, broader range of issues that I have. So I've never forgotten that people matter, and that helps me drive the work that I do. In some of the earlier slides, another important thing to remember is a lesson from some of the earlier slides. Local government is the one that is closest to the people. Yet, it seems that for most citizens, residents of a community, they know the least about their local government. And that's kind of a conundrum. I always stress the importance of local government. In fact, I would argue it is the most important form of government that we have in our system of government in the United States. And it's most important because, as one of the earlier slides pointed out, it's the level of government that has the most direct impact on your life. Safe drinking water, the streets you travel on, public safety, parks, schools your children may attend, those things that really matter to you. Yet, I would say more of you probably know, this is true of most residents of the community, they know who the President of the United States is. They might be able to name their US Senator or some of the other politicians and elected officials they see on TV, but could not name their mayor or their state senator or the people who most closely work with the issues that matter to them. They may not know the people who are on the school board, yet those are the people who decide the policies that affect their children's education, what happens in the school. They may not know their county commissioners who direct things like the health department, where they may receive some of the important health care that they receive. So that's why an important lesson is that this one is closest to the people. So they also asked, what are the best ways to see meaningful policy changes in local government? And so I guess I would continue with the thought that I was just talking about, which is understanding which level of government does what. And this also was in one of the earlier slides. Knowing that your city and county governments often provide things like water, garbage collection, the streets, sidewalks, parks, education, schools, your local health department. These are all functions of your local government, and then knowing which one to call. It's a little complicated sometimes, particularly those of you who grew up in other countries where you may not have quite this complicated a system of government. There's an old political theorist here in the United States who grew up with something called a marble cake. I don't know if any of your mothers or grandmothers baked marble cakes, but it's a white cake that has streaks of chocolate mixed into it. So it kind of looks like marble that you would dig out of the earth, the rock marble. And this political theorist compared the United States system of government to a marble cake, where the levels sort of blend together. And sometimes it's very hard to understand or negotiate. And as was said earlier, that often leads to frustration because you may call that elected official that you know or you met or you saw in the paper and ask for their help, and they're not able to help you. For instance, in my office here at the state capitol, we often get questions about passports. That's a fairly common issue for folks. The woman who works here on my floor, our housekeeper, is an immigrant from Trinidad, and Annie needed some help securing visa for a family member of hers. Well, those are the kinds of things that the state government does not control. Those are maintained at the federal level. In Annie's case, I was able to make a call to our congressman's office, and we were able to secure that visa for her family member, and we were able to work it out, but I don't have that direct contact. So it's important to understand which level of government performs which functions. But once you've understood that, then I think a very important thing to do is to get to know your local officials. It's very unlikely that any of us would ever have a chance to meet President Biden or Vice President Harris, You might sometime meet your United States senator. Every state has 2 of them, but in North Carolina, that means those 2 United States senators serve 10 million people. It's a lot more likely you could get to know your local, your state representatives, your state senators, state representatives. As Nao said, on a number of occasions, I've been invited to work with the Church World Service group in Durham and meet some of the folks there. So they've gotten to know me there. But it's more likely, again, just because of the numbers involved, that you could meet your city council member or a county commissioner or a school board member. And make the effort to get to know them. Invite them to events that you have. They love coming to activities, a social function, an educational function. Invite them to speak to a gathering of refugees in the community. That might be through your organization like Church World Service. It might be to a religious group, to a neighborhood group. Any way you're in an association, invite your local officials to come. I think you're going to find them to be very responsive and very interested in attending. Elected service doesn't pay a lot. Most of the elected jobs that we have are part-time jobs. This is serving in the legislature. Some people think is my only job. It's not. It is only a part-time job and it doesn't pay very much. So people who serve an elected office, for the most part, there are exceptions, but for the most part, you will find that we really genuinely like people and we genuinely want to help people. That's why reaching out to us will often result in some of us coming to see you. So get to know us. If you see us out in the community, for the most part, we are happy to talk to you. We tend to be outgoing people and we love to know about you. So getting to know your people, the people who represent you, is, I think, the very first important step in seeing that meaningful policy. Nao touched on this just a couple of minutes ago, but work together. Don't work in silos. You can be much more effective when you work with other groups around an issue. Find the groups in your community that are working on the issue or concern you have. There is strength in numbers. So oftentimes people think, and I see this often around issues, well, I don't know who's working on this, so they go start their own group. And soon on any particular issue, let's say cleaning up the water system, then you have 4 or 5 different groups scattered about who are all working in the same thing. Whereas if somebody had done a little work, maybe we could put all those groups together, and instead of 5 groups with 2 people each, we have 1 group with 10 people that comes together. And it's much stronger that way. So work together around those issues, concerns, or opportunities that you want to share with your government. And finally, I would just say, get involved. One of the great things about democracy in general, and I think about the American system of democracy, is how people are engaged. And we hear a lot of talk now about threats to American democracy. And I think that often comes when people are not involved or not engaged. On my bookshelf here, in fact, I think I have it close by, is, I'm going to pull it. Alexis de Tocqueville was a famous French political theorist, philosopher, who came to the young United States, and it was very early in our democracy here, and wrote this book, Democracy in America. And he spent a lot of time, and he found some things that he thought were unique to the American people. Well, I'm not sure that they were unique to the American people, and certainly in the 200 plus years since de Tocqueville wrote this book, often those things about democracy have spread around the world. But he made interesting observations about how people were engaged in ways he did not see in the countries he had studied throughout Europe. And when we are in fear or in danger of losing our democracy, it's because we don't become engaged. And I know sometimes people want to put obstacles in front of our involvement, whether that's in voting, whether that's in participating through feedback or engaging with their elected officials. But don't give up, be persistent. And again, by knowing your elected officials, by working together, you can overcome some of those obstacles. But just find a way to get involved. Those of you who know Nike, the sports athletic shoes and athletic clothes, their phrase is just do it. And I think that's a very good motto for all of us. Just do it. And I've always said that democracy is not a spectator sport. It demands active participation. Nao, I'll stop there. Unless you have questions or others do, I'm happy to address those. I hope those were the kinds of things that you all were looking for, and that me sharing these thoughts was helpful for our presentation tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Woodward. We will have some questions at the end, and I am very hopeful that you will stick around and answer some of those. Great. Awesome. Matt, there you go.
Sure. We want to make sure that you're, participating here, and we're sure that everybody has issues that they want to discuss. So what we'd love for you to do in the chat right now is put up one or two issues that you face at a local level, and hopefully we'll have time at the end to be able to kind of brainstorm together to figure out ways to tackle those issues in your community. So if you can start tossing them in the chat, like, it can be anything. It can be access to COVID information or vaccines. It could be streets. It could be anything. Just put in some potential issues that you have, and hopefully we can talk about them at the end today. I wanted to just quickly say here, when it comes to elected and appointed officials, they are very important. And as Senator Woodard perfectly said, we want you to make contact, go to meetings, invite them to yours. Email, call, run into them at restaurants. I'm just joking. Don't do that. Let them eat in peace. We also want you to run for office yourself and get involved. We want you to consider being appointed to whatever boards and commissions that your city has that makes crucial decisions about housing and zoning and all of those important things. And as you can see here, we want you to get involved in government-sponsored trainings, leadership cohorts, and programming. Here in Lancaster, many refugee leaders have improved their advocacy for their community and their neighborhoods in the city. We don't always want to make it about just representing your community, but people's neighborhoods. But we also want to make sure that you understand that you have to work with day-to-day decision makers. Local government is so much more than just, no offense, Senator Woodard, but more than just the elected officials. They are just the tip of the iceberg. There are people on the everyday basis that make the decisions, the policies, the approaches of local government that make government work. Right? Someone is actually figuring out which streets to pave, and that they're figuring out how to do it and how to do it under budget. So those are the folks that you also need to be building relationships with. And oftentimes your elected officials are the first step to getting to the people who do language access coordinating, who are in fire, police, and justice issues. And so I'm going to pass it over to Goldie Guman here in Lancaster to talk about a specific case study that we've had that wasn't just working with elected officials and worked with local police departments. And I'm going to be checking the chat for some of the local issues so that we can talk about when we're done. Passing it over to you, Goldie.
Thank you, Matt. So we have created Momo with the 5-0 event that is this coming Saturday. And Momo is one of the most popular dish dumpling in Nepal. And we are working for this event. We're working with the local police, with East Hempfield Police Department, to build relationship with the former Nepali refugees. And the reason we have created this event is because a lot of former refugees in the Nepali community, they moved into a suburban community, and the police, they didn't have a good relationship with the new Nepali community. And they wanted to build a good relationship with them. So the Nepali community wary of police, didn't know how to do basic things like what to do if they're pulled over or what type of things required a police call. So Nepali community, they had a very negative experiences with law enforcement officers in Nepal and Bhutan. And so they were very distrustful and fearful of police. So we knew we needed to create an event and to bring those officers and the Nepali community together. So in order to do so, we brought together leaders from Nepali community and the police to work on the issue. We created a business card that can be used for stops. And when they're stopped by police officers, it says, this is my language and the next steps. So for this event, we had a meeting with two young Nepalese leaders, Dili and Basu, to create the structure of the event. We had a conversation with the church to hold this event. And we also made sure to reach out to the representatives from the township so they can attend this event as well. And for this event, we recorded two messages, one from a police officer and someone from a Nepali community, informing the community to join this Momo with the 50 event. And at this upcoming event, we are going to present gifts to the police officers. The community members will give Nepali topi and scarf to the officers as gifts. And we will also share business cards of local refugees businesses with the police officers so we can keep the connection going. And afterwards, we will divide everyone in smaller groups and we will have a sit-down meal, a community engagement meeting discussing policing, rights, responsibilities, and ways to improve connection between the police and the Nepali community. And this in future leading to videos of for all immigrants on how to do traffic stop and welcoming immigrants to the community. And also while we were having a discussion, a meeting with Dili and Basu, two Nepalese refugees and leaders. So they have shared another concern, a need that was expressed by many in the community is how to tackle domestic violence. So while we have taken big steps on building trust, the end goal is to see how we could partner with the law enforcement officers, social workers, and advocates to deal with domestic violence in immigrant communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Goldie. And I did want to emphasize exactly what Goldie said, which is that this all started with one conversation between one police officer and one community member. And now it's turning into a state level advocacy. Other departments and other communities are getting to know theirs. And we want to really balance the responsibilities, like, what you have to do during a traffic stop with knowing your rights. And this was a concession for the police, to include that stuff, but I think it's very important. So now I think we really appreciate some of the themes that are coming out, the relationship building that you can do at the local level, the kind of sense of momentum once you start getting to work on things. And so let's talk about some of the things that we're seeing in the chat. I've been monitoring the chat, and there's a lot of really fantastic things here. And I think that two that are emerging that I'm seeing is jobs and equal opportunity and language access. We also have a question specifically about North Carolina, and we have about 5 minutes or so to talk about these. So with Nayo and Goldie, perhaps we can. So for example, one issue that I'll tag really quickly is the language access. That was from Daniela Archibald. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Language access on disaster and emergency alerts. And that's a really fantastic example of something that needs to happen on a local level, right? It's not enough just to have the federal government involved there. And so the first thing that I can say on that front, and then I'll open it up to Nayo and Goldie to see their ideas, is that is that it's really important, obviously, for things like COVID, as Nayo said, and things like disasters, hurricanes, fires, and so forth, that it gets out to everybody. It doesn't matter, as Nayo said, if you're from, were born here or have been here for 3 days. If there's a fire, you need to know. And one way that I've been able to work with local government on language access is that every local government that receives federal funding has to provide at least some of that information from the federal funding in languages that are spoken throughout their locality. And one way that we've worked with that in Lancaster City has been to say, hey, if you're already translating certain programs into the most spoken languages, which here are Arabic, Nepali, Swahili, Karen, and some others, why not just translate everything? Use the power that you're already putting into these federal funds into push notifications. And I think that handles disaster and emergency release and so forth. And this is something that's still ongoing. It's not going to be something they can do overnight, but in terms of making sure that there's language access on disaster and emergency alerts, I would check to see if your locality has a language access coordinator. Check to see if they understand what languages are spoken and where you see gaps. A lot of times they're basing their decisions on census information that may be old or may not represent what's going on in the city there. So I would suggest that you talk to someone at your local city level to see how they can make sure that all of the things that they're putting out can get out to the greatest number of people. Nayo or Goldie, do you have any extra input or thoughts on any of the really great things that we're seeing? Mental health services, jobs and equal opportunity, language access, and so forth.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much. I think you covered the language access part of it. I would like to tackle the job. I think I've seen some question regarding some foreign credentials and why those are not been recognized here. People have to go back to school, and yes. So if you don't mind, let me say this, Senator Woodruff. I hope you're still there. We've been working with Senator Woodruff for a while on that particular point, and we try to get the state, the North Carolina State Assembly, to pass a steady bill to see what people are bringing and how the North Carolina State can leverage that. And I think Senator Woodruff might have a word or two to add to that, right?
Yes. So I think, yeah, what we're trying to do is I've drafted a bill and we're discussing it here now about having a task force which helps us figure out the breadth of the problem. And then we hear, and that gets back to the working together. I know this is an issue for refugees I know from Pakistan, and both the husband and the wife have professional degrees from Pakistan, but they don't translate to the United States. So as a result, they're not working fully in their profession that they're trained for. So we're trying to get a handle around how many issues that are. We know there's often a lot in the medical field, in the scientific fields like engineering, for instance. So we're trying to get a grasp around how many that is, and whether we need laws to do that, or if we can have the special government agencies that grant these licenses can do it on their own without legislation. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll make some progress on that over the next year or so.
I just want to add to that we have similar issues in Pennsylvania with medical certification and so forth. And one way that local government or local coalition building can do that is starting the work ahead of time. And so we've partnered with several other nonprofits who have created a course of study to help get folks recertified until the state legislature starts making decisions. And you're exactly right, Lubab. We at CWS Lancaster had over 250 Cuban doctors be resettled in Lancaster, and essentially the state told them, yeah, there's nothing we can do for you. You'll never be a doctor again. And so this coalition at a local level with a local college and with local medical providers said, no, we want to be able to use these medical professionals to the greatest degree of their skills and knowledge. So let's put this together, a course that it's an expedited course in nursing. And we're hoping that by doing this, and maybe Senator Woodard, you'd probably agree, that you can start to put pressure on the state to say, hey, everything's in place. All we need is to get you guys out of the way. Here's a case where we're not even asking government to do something great like Nayo did with his task force, but we're asking government to just get out of the way and let them realize that the barriers that they're putting on there are keeping hundreds of thousands of international physicians under or unemployed. I think that's probably all the time. We're a little bit over, not too much over. So I think that went very well. And I hope that I can speak for, I know I can speak for Senator Woodard and Nayo and Goldie and everybody when I say thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you to We Are All America and OFA for having us. And really importantly, thank you for all the work that you all do in your communities to try to influence positive change and make things work better for all communities. What I always tell people is that if we can make our communities welcoming for the new American community, then they're going to be welcoming for everybody. Everybody gets lifted if we can make sure that our communities are ready for that. So if you have any questions and you want us to go into more detail with some of the specific questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and I'm sure that we'll get back to you and discuss what you need. So thanks again for being here, and please be in touch. We hopefully will do a government 301 and then maybe an advanced study course someday.
Matt, I think there are other training coming next month that we have on next slide. Boom. Oh.
So yeah, that's not on the slide here, but Andres, would you want to mention what that training is? Thank you for,
Yes, no problem. So we do have a digital organizing one-on-one training coming up. I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but it is on the same form that everyone who filled out for this event. So if you filled out for this event and selected interest in the digital one-on-one training, you will also be receiving an invite in your email soon. And so just a heads up, I'm giving free templates for press and media advisory. We're doing a whole introduction PowerPoint training. So we're trying to make sure it's a really robust training. So if you're interested or know anyone that's interested, feel free to sign up.
Yeah, I wanted to add that we also going to have a training on how to organize advocacy days on December 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern. To learn more, there'll be a Google form sent to you to fill out. And yeah, thank you so much.